Hi, I'm Linda Valdez.
I'm Sixto Valdez.
I wrote a love story about immigration. It's a different kind of immigration story. It's our story. It's a story about two people who were in love and couldn't get together because of that danged fence. It happened 28 years ago.
I didn't want to cross the border illegally. I was raised a Mennonite. I didn't like to do anything illegal.
I'm a journalist, so I thought I could make the system work so that he could get a visa and come here legally. But I found out the system doesn't work.
So I came through a hole in the fence to be with the love of my life. 2 weeks later, we got married.
As I said, that was 28 years ago. And I decided to write a story about our relationship and our marriage because I got tired of hearing so much ugly rhetoric about Mexico and Mexicans. I wanted to tell the truth.
The book is called Crossing the Line, A Marriage Across Borders.
It's a story about the new American family.
So, why don't you talk a little bit about your first meeting with your mother-in-law, and then maybe read an excerpt from that meeting from your book.
Okay, well, I need a little bit of background. Well, Sixto came through a hole in the fence because we were unable to get him a visa. We tried to go through the whole process. He did not want to come here illegally, but they kept turning him down for a visa, despite the fact that I went through all the steps they said and produced all the paperwork they told me to get. So eventually he decided to come through a hole in the fence, which he did. And we were married 2 weeks after that. And it took then maybe another calendar year before we got everything settled so that he had his legal residency. So during that period of time, he couldn't go back to Mexico, and I did not meet his mother. When we finally arranged to take the trip, we'd been married for some period of time. And of course, I had some level of trepidation. I can read that. Sixto looked toward the house and called out again, "Mama!" There she was. Doña Sole was a head shorter than my husband, solid but not fat, with long gray hair pulled into a ponytail at the base of her neck. Her cotton dress had a pattern of tiny pink flowers. My grandmother would have called it a house dress. But instead of the heavy lace-up shoes my grandmother would have worn with thick stockings, Doña Sole wore plastic flip-flops. She stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on a frayed kitchen towel that hung over her shoulder. He ran to her, and she fell into Sixto's arms and began weeping. This was exponentially more intense than the greetings from the other women. This time, the world stopped. As they embraced, she wept and exclaimed things like, "Gracias a Dios," and "Mijo." Sixto wept too, and said things back to the top of her head, which was buried in his chest. After what seemed like a very long time, the earth began to revolve around the sun again. Kids ran from behind the house. More voices could be heard exclaiming my husband's name. A big truck chugged down the highway, followed by another bus, its gears protesting the sudden downshift at the speed bump. Sixto reached out to me over his mother's shoulder, still weeping. The other ladies shepherded me forward. When I got close enough, he pulled me into their embrace. It was a tight hug, and all I could do was hold on. I tried to return the intensity of their moment, but I was unaccustomed to such raw emotion. It washed over me, but it did not sweep me away. My eyes stayed dry, and I felt a twinge of guilt about that. In a few moments, the hug loosened and I stepped back. Doña Sole looked at me and said something I didn't understand. I smiled. Then she pulled me into a hug that included just the two of us. There was more weeping, more exclamations. When I got the chance, I smiled again and nodded at her. She seemed entirely satisfied. We began another round of hugging. I had not said one word, but I'd been accepted. From that moment on, whatever I did, whatever harebrained, outlandish North American request I might have, was just fine with Sixto's mother. I was part of her family and under her protection as surely as a chick under the wing of its mother hen. So that's how it was. She embraced me from the beginning, and when my mother and my sister and my nephew went down there, the whole family embraced them too.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, the quinceañera was sort of my effort to bring some joy back into the family, because my mother had died, and Sixto's mother had died, and Sixto's sister Tonita, who sort of inherited the mantle of family matriarch, she was deep in mourning, and Sixto was deep in mourning, and it was a very sad time for all of us. And I thought, we had discussed, well, maybe we'll have a quinceañera, but who's going to come here? We have hundreds of relatives down there. We wouldn't have had a very big party if we'd done it in the United States. So I got this good idea. I thought, okay, what if Tonita is planning a quinceañera? She can't be glum about that. So I suggested it to Sixto, and he thought it was a good idea. We suggested it to Lucy, and she thought it was a good idea. So the next, I don't know, it was probably 6 months of planning went into that quinceañera, which we had on, Lucy's birthday is May 14th, but we had to wait till school was out, so we did it in early June. But there were hundreds of people there, and it really, it was just a marvelous event, and it did the trick. I think it helped people move on and start celebrating life again.
Life in Mexico, I mean, has changed a little because of the education they have gotten, but not much since I came to the U.S. My mother's house is different, of course. You know, we started brick by brick, and Linda and I put the tile in the bathroom, so that was a pretty impressive. I mean, my mom was very impressed with Linda.
She was very proud. She was proud of both of us, but she was very proud. Yeah, she would tell people how hard I was working.